good God, you look amazing. Seriously, Leticia, wait till you get up here. I have never seen such beautiful, righteous people. There are a lot of things that I wanted to say to you. Too many things to say. It's a long conference. And there are a lot of things that I would really like to hear from you. I feel like I am sitting in a room full of experts about this movement, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you over the next 2 days. I have the honor and the pleasure of working with Betsy Hartman and Courtney Hooks at the Population and Development Program here at Hampshire, and of walking in the footsteps of former PopDev staff, several of whom are here this morning and this weekend, and all of whom I look up to. For 26 years, PopDev has worked at an intersection of environment, development, anti-militarism, and reproductive freedom. It's a very busy intersection. But at the center of our work is the commitment to challenge the conventional wisdom, and I use the word wisdom loosely there, that population growth is the main force behind social problems, from famine and violent conflicts to ecosystem degradation and even climate change. We strive to bring those conversations back to the structures of global inequality, colonization, and overconsumption that actually drive them. And these are very hard conversations to have. For many of us, they are about our bodies and the bodies of people we love. And for many folks, the conversations challenge some of their fundamental understandings of the world, to suggest that there are not actually too many people on the planet, but an unsustainable, industrially demanding level of consumption from a minority of those people. A student asked me recently what the number 7 billion means. That is, what the global population reaching 7 billion means. And my answer was that while that number may have a lot of meaning for some people, may mean something scary or overwhelming to them personally, it has no inherent meaning itself. That's because when you're talking in terms of consumption, in terms of the actual use or waste of food and water, of energy and space and fuels, you're not talking about 7 billion of the same thing. People like to tell us sometimes that overpopulation is just math. But that's not true. Because in terms of mathematical units, those 7 billion people are nowhere near equivalent. In fact, researchers like David Satterthwaite, and look him up if you don't already know who that is, or see me after this if you want to know how to spell his name, point out that the consumption levels of 2 actual human beings plucked at random from among that 7 billion may vary from each other by a degree of up to 1,000 times. That's not simple, and it's not just math. But I'm not here to criticize the people who disagree with me, and the people for whom 7 billion is a big and scary and meaningful number. I don't like to make fun of people for being scared, and if you're not scared, if this is just how you feel and you know that, I don't think I'm going to change your mind. What I do want to do is try to convince you that this is not the way to build a movement around this fear of 7 billion. This is not strategic. And that if we're looking for ethical ground to build from, this is not it. Do I believe that the planet can sustain unchecked population growth? No. I also don't think that's actually what the Earth is faced with when people have access to affordable, culturally competent, unstigmatized, safe, full-spectrum reproductive health care. That would mean the kind of health care that has been criminalized and disrupted throughout industrialization and colonization. Tell an Indigenous reproductive justice activist or a Black traditional midwife when abortion was decriminalized in the US. And they'll ask you to take a minute and think about when it was made illegal in the first place. It's not traditional for women to be unable to determine when or if they will have children. It's not traditional for people to be shamed or feel guilty or afraid for seeking the knowledge and skills of healers in making those determinations. In the anti-sex, imperialist, misogynist worldview of folks like Thomas Malthus, the 18th century white English clergyman who gave us the idea of unchecked population growth, people were powerless against the forces of reproduction. In that worldview, the fear certainly makes sense, but that doesn't make it traditional or true. So to folks who are tying access to contraceptives and abortion or women's education and economic empowerment to the need to slow population growth, I say, please stop. Please consider that those goals are good and powerful and necessary in their own right. Please recognize that when we tie people's needs and interests to a goal held for them by other, perhaps more powerful and wealthy people, it ties your campaign to meet their needs to upholding that goal. Specifically, it ties the value of girls' and women's education and well-being and lives to the beliefs other people have about how many children they should be having and when. There is nothing revolutionary about that. And to my fellow white, middle-class, environmentally committed women activists, and I do mean fellow, who are in increasing numbers seeking praise and recognition and converts for their personal choice not to procreate, I say with all respect, please knock it off. Yes, I understand that you are trying to acknowledge the importance of consumption, the truth that a child of yours will almost without doubt be 1,000 times more costly to the planet than the children of the women usually held hostage to population reduction ideologies. And I support and I honor you in your choice to be child-free. But your claims to moral or green superiority, your efforts to transform your personal decisions into campaigns, green inclinations, no kids, pretend an ignorance of the way political power works that rings completely false. When people with global privilege and power say something is dangerous, unethical, unsustainable, where is it legislated? Your campaigns might convince some of your actual wealthy white consumerist counterparts to have fewer children. But what they will definitely do is convince them that other people should be having fewer children. And when the chance comes to support that goal in their daily conversations, in choosing which political candidates to support, in deciding how to engage in reproductive politics organizing, or what kinds of organizations to give their money to, they will support that goal for the bodies of people of color, poor people, indigenous people, and people in the global south. For people they do not know, cannot speak for, and whose lives and options they have a disturbingly high level of influence over. We don't get to pretend that that is not the end result of population reduction conversations, campaigns, and policies. It always has been. And when we invoke that language of overpopulation, too many people, of can't feed 'em, don't breed 'em, these are the stories we are actually invoking. Whether we know it or not, whether we are honest about it or not, whether we care or not. Black, Puerto Rican, and indigenous women in the United States sterilized without their consent and sometimes even their knowledge for generations. Immigrant women targeted in many states right now for punitive legislation meant to control their fertility. Romani women in Eastern Europe targeted by social workers for sterilization. HIV-positive women in Kenya offered cash bribes by US-based nonprofits to go on long-term birth control regardless of the impact to their health. 300,000 and more Quechua women and men sterilized in Peru at the turn of this century in a campaign with political support from USAID. Countless other stories, personal, painful, life-changing stories. Teaching these histories, speaking about those stories and experiences, recognizing them as something we do not have the right to casually invoke and dismiss. That is the way you build a movement. Building that movement does not stop us from working to reduce the consumption of global elites, or counteracting climate change, or ending food insecurity. I honestly believe it will help us. And so I ask you, whether or not we agree about the math or even the ethics, please find a new strategy. Because I want to fight at your side for our shared goals. But I am not willing to turn my back on so many people's lived experiences in order to do it. Thank you. Woo.